Hey, John.
Oh, Nick, we're here. What a week it's been.
Jo-
In terms of
Oh,
our trying to
John.
get this thing scheduled.
So I have to start with an apology to you, John, and to the people that are following this channel. So this is late. And on top of that, not only is it late, it's going to be far briefer than this subject really deserves. Scheduling, real life, and technology has all got in our way.
Seriously, they don't know this, but you were on a mission of mercy this last weekend. We don't go into the details of that. It really sacrificial love that you showed to somebody this weekend. And it's allowed us to have more conversations about this subject. And yeah, it's
That's true.
condensed. There's a lot of reading material to do on this subject.
Yeah.
But it's all providential, I hope. And I hope that people are patient. I want to send something to our paid subscribers. I'll talk about that during the show, what I'm sending to them. But for our subscribers that are really in a knot about this book, which is really challenging. It's as I think I said in my post on Monday. If you just read this thing as a straight up detective fiction piece, it really is a fail there, and everybody feels it. And yet there's also a power to it. It's a rolling story. You're truly engaged at some depth. And most of us don't live there, it requires, what Ruskin called the deep mining, where you sit there and stare at the picture until you get what the painting really is about. And that's what we're going to start today. I mean, we talked last time, or the first time we talked about, this one of the seven keys is the misdirection towards defamiliarization, kind of shocking thing. And this book is always has to be remembered that book 8 is the setup for books 9 and 10. And so we talked about the shocking things that Rowling is going to set us up with. And that was fun. But today we're going to talk about one of the other keys, which is the mythology tool, shed tool, and what it does inside the story. And as if we were going to do that already, Rowling is forced now. Like, hey, those of you who are struggling, look at the mythology, look at the mythology, and not just mythology in general, but this specific myth, and maybe you'll get what I'm after here, and what the next book promises. Now that was a shocking thing, Nick. And it went up right after our defamiliarization, post went up an hour afterwards. Hey, all you people! I mean, talk about that, Nick. This is your bailiwick here.
Well, it's one of two big shocks I had. So the first one is we had that preview chapters finally in English, chapter 3. The first thing I had to do was call my friend in Oklahoma and say, "Hey, John, you've already written this chapter. Do you realize?" That was shocking. And the second shock was this tweet. So it was a very early tweet, actually. The Mavens at Strike Ellicott Files podcast had somehow managed to read the book on the day of publication. I mean, a Herculean effort. And they sent up a tweet, which I think resonated with a large section of the fandom. So on the day of publication, they tweeted, "We adore you, J.K. Rowling, but after reading #the Hallmark Man, we're no longer a podcast, but an emotional support group. #very excited for book 9.
That's as close as super fans will come to saying, "What?
Yeah.
I don't get it."
So there was another tweet, I think, underneath it was, "J.K. Rowling, we have a number of questions for you." And then there was a GIF underneath that said, "First question, how dare you?" So I was on a social media.
They've backed off that position since.
Yeah. Well, yes. They have. Let's be clear. They love the book. They love the book, and I think they enjoy the fact that this tension, this jeopardy has been drawn out. They're still on tenterhooks. But I didn't see this until long after I'd finished the book. I was on a social media blackout. I got so close to being spoilt on Ink Black Heart. As soon as I have the book, I stop looking at Twitter until I finished the book. So I hadn't caught up with these old tweets yet, but I caught up with J.K. Rowling's answer. So she responded to that tweet saying, "A public service announcement for Strike and Robin fans, many of whom are saying the same things in my mention. I'm sorry about the emotional trauma, but I never said this would be easy. Hashtag the Hallmark man. Hashtag Strike 9 is well underway, and this picture may have some relevance to it." Now, I caught the alert while I was in work, very swiftly made my way to the smoking shelter for a quick break, because I knew that it was going to be fastest finger first to see who could identify this picture. It was a classical painting, two classical figures ascending through the sky. John, if he'd have seen it, would have known that painting, because I think he's used it on a previous post. So he would have known. I had no idea. Now it wasn't easy, because
you don't read my post, Nick.
Of course I do. Of course I do. You know I struggle with the mythology, but this was some years ago. I mean, it was more than 4 years ago that you'd posted this up. So the painting is by a French gentleman, and excuse me for butchering his name, but William Adolphe Bouguereau, and it's called L'amour et Psyche, painted in 1889. Now, that was a bit of a struggle because it's widely misattributed online, but that is actually the gentleman and the subject that he was painting. L'amour et Psyche, of course, is Cupid and Psyche. And as soon as I got as far as Cupid and Psyche, I had to call my friend in Oklahoma, because I knew not only that he'd been writing about this mythological template for many, many years and its application to the Strike Ellicott series, but he'd also very gently scolded me when I missed the most perfect Cupid reference to Strike's gift of bows and arrows to his nephews in the running grave. I just missed that completely. And that was one of our very early conversations about the running grave. But yeah, hugely excited. And, it's for me, it's almost similar to the Solvay et Coagula on the writing hand, Solvay et Coagula tattoo, in that there could be no clearer evidence of the importance of alchemy to Rowling's work. Well, clearly, not only can there be no clearer evidence the importance of mythology to what Rowling does, but absolutely John was right about this Cupid and Psyche template, and we're going to see this in the future of both Robin and Cormoran.
Now, you're very kind as always. But let's say that there's two interpretations of her putting this picture up. The first one is that she's hat tipping the work I've done, and if you look below in this video post, you'll see all the posts that you and I have done about this subject, and that would be nice. I mean, I don't get it. Rowling didn't invite me to the Conrecki party. She doesn't. She never says, hey, hashtag, Hogwarts professor or something like that to have people know this. So that would be fun. That would be really fun. The other one is that she knows I've written about this stuff, and she's hoping that we'll just go overboard here, Nick, and go all in on it. And it's not what we make it out to be. That would be really tough with Valentine Lancaster and those bows and arrows. And she's really getting a lot of clues to this.
Can I just say, John, if that's true, then bait well and truly taken.
I mean, there's another possibility that you've talked about, which is that she doesn't know anything I've written. And that's the most flattering one in a way, because then she's confirmed it without, having read any of this stuff. And what's funny about it is I went through last night, I went through that thread. Now that specific picture of Cupid and Psyche rising, Psyche ascendant to heaven, her divinization is really powerful image. It wasn't the first thing I wrote about Psyche and Cupid, but there were I think there was 50 images of Psyche and Cupid in that post. That thread is a flood. I mean, I don't know. I only read about 100 of them, but and they're very brief, obviously. Like, yay, and first of all, we know that post is in response to Strike Ellicott files, because she said the exact same thing about, I didn't know that it was going to be easy to the initial post about those things. And so we know this is still, she said, I'm getting a lot of mentions about this. Yeah, there was a lot of pushback at 900 pages and no progress on the thing that we're really concerned about, which is, getting Strike and Ellicott into bed. This, and wait a minute, how frustrating is that? That's what I'm here for. Well, that possibility that Rowling is affirming what we've done without knowing what we've done, that would be the best. That would be the best. But you go through that thread with its hundreds and hundreds of responses, not a single person says, wow, Hogwarts Professor has really beat this drum for years. That starting with Troubled Blood, they finally grokked to what you were about from the very first scenes of Cuckoo's Calling. How about that? No, I think one of the Strike fans crowd says, this reminds me of what someone says. I wonder what she's thinking today. So someone apparently has talked about this on one of their podcasts or something and mentioned that work that we've done, or maybe even just grokked to it themselves. I mean, and that would be great, but nobody said, wow, we've beaten this to death already. 3 cheers for the Hogwarts Professor crew for, figuring this out. And it's largely that Rowling is offering that as a corrective because she understands, of course, why she uses mythology in her writing. And we haven't got that much time today to go through all the details, how the death of Lula Landry and the proposal of Matt Cunliffe underneath the statue of Eros, which is Anteros in Piccadilly Circus, why those two things are really about the Psyche and Cupid myth and how it plays out over the story. But we can talk about mythology as an important tool in what Rowling does. And I wrote a post about this just this time last year, called, it's provocatively called Rowling's G-Spot and Triple Play. And what the G-spot, just so you can remember it, is the spot is the point of origin, and the G is for genius. And that what makes Rowling really the writer of our age is that she takes these personal issues and core beliefs in her lake, the springs of her lake, and she crystallizes them using these traditional tools in her shed so that it's archetypal. It's a universal experience. It's about what all of us, know about. That she's really writing in this book. She's really writing about love, and what Paul Deal, one of the interpreters of myth that I'm sure she's read, or Robert Johnson, are talking about is how love is to be understood, which is really, what life as a human being is about really transcendence of the ego self and elision with another. Self and other is the great gap to be cleared in human existence. And love is the most obvious example of that. But there's the erotic experience. I'm already going into the interpretation. What Paul Deal talks about in terms of mythology is that there's banalization and then there's sublimation. The banalization is the reduction of things to just the coarser aspects of life, love to the sexual, love to be, falling in love with love, which clearly was what the Psyche and Eros myth is about. But then there's the sublimation where you transcend that, but men and women do that differently. Men do it largely through ascetic exercises, and women through a denial of their feminine nature, the caring and nurturing aspects, and their love of beauty is their exteriorization of beauty is so core to the feminine experience biologically There's a funny book on breastfeeding called "So That's What These Are For," about breasts, and that's obviously a part of the feminine function. They feed people out of their bodies. To a man, that's just like it's so alien to us. Obviously, how can we possibly understand that? Feminine psychology is something that Rowling obviously is consumed by, and these books, the Cormoran Strike novels, are really about this struggle between the erotic on the banal level and the anti-erotic, which is about this sublimated, elevated love. And there's also just let's go through the myth, Nick. Do you have your notes about this myth for people that, and this is covered in all these posts that are down below, but and in fact, there's actually the Apuleius Golden Ass retelling of the story that all the psychologists and myth lovers use. But can you give us a 5-minute summary of this?
So really quick summary. So we have Psyche, who is a beautiful young lady. She's feeling a little bit like her life is going backwards because all of the ladies that she knows, particularly her sisters, are getting married and having families, and she isn't. She's noticed by Venus, Aphrodite, so a cold, calculating, if incredibly beautiful woman who decides to get her revenge. She does that by setting Cupid to fire one of his arrows at Psyche so that she will fall in love with some hideous person and therefore shame her own beauty. Now, Cupid is the erotic form of love. He plays around a lot. He allows other people to commit adultery. Generally incontinent. You could call it, I guess, some sort of a distraction technique from his own lack of inner love, inner connection. But it all goes wrong. So he shoots himself with an arrow accidentally, and he then falls head over heels in love with Psyche. This upsets Venus. Venus decides to punish Psyche, and she does that by setting a mock, kind of perverse wedding. Almost, it's set out almost like a funeral, in which she is going to be wedded to some horrible creature. And this happens by, at the ceremony, Psyche is sent off a cliff. You can imagine this like a long staircase. She tumbles off the cliff, is caught by the sacred wind Zephyr, and is transported to this pleasant location where the creature that she is paradise, the creature that she is married to, she is forbidden from ever seeing. Sisters petition Venus to be allowed to visit her in paradise. They encourage Psyche to take a glimpse of what her husband is, expecting her husband to be this hideous serpent type creature. She is successful, catches a glimpse of Cupid, and is then banished by Venus. Have I got that right so far?
I mean, there's differences in the way the story is told, but yeah, that you get us into the veil, and we have the light and the knife. That she takes the lamp and oil and looks closely and sees that this is not a monster. It's the god of love, and she's ready to kill him. And he wakes up because the oil drips on him. He's injured. He flies off. He goes into a bower. He chastises her, and then he flies off to Venus's thing. And now she's really lost, right? I mean,
she is.
She kills her two sisters. I've got Grimm's fairy tale in there. She kills the two sisters. That's one of my favorite parts. Anyway,
so they get their just desserts. So Yes, so she wounds herself on one of the arrows in the surprise at seeing Cupid. She falls in love with Cupid. So now both Cupid and Eros are passionate in love with each other, but he flees. She tries to pursue, but she is abandoned on the bank of a river where she is discovered by Pan. So Pan, the wilderness god, the goat-legged creature of debauchery and passion, who recognizes the sign of passion upon her. And then she acknowledges Pan, his divinity, acknowledges him as a god, and then begins to wander the earth looking for her lost love. Now, during the wandering, she comes upon a temple of, and I'm going to pronounce this wrong, is it Ceres or Keres?
Ceres, like cereal.
Okay. Where she sees disordered offerings of grains and garlands. She tidies everything in order, and then Ceres himself actually appears, and he agrees to give her help.
It's a she.
It's a she.
She only goes to goddesses of anyway. This was
a mistake. This was a mistake giving the engineer the mythology run over. Okay.
This is great. I'm loving this.
So Psyche realizes through talking to Ceres that she actually has to serve Venus herself if she's going to get Venus back on side and be allowed to marry Cupid.
Ceres and Hera Juno. She goes to both goddesses. Okay.
Right.
She really does the pinnacle of feminine goddesses. And oops, they both point to the third person in the room, which is Aphrodite. Oops.
Well, yeah, Aphrodite, anyway. being the cold and calculating, incredible beauty that she is, doesn't take to Psyche. Bullies her, basically, gets her two handmaidens, charmingly named Worry and Sadness, to whip and torture her. And then
in some versions of the story, Psyche is pregnant at this point.
That's right. Yeah, not in Bullfinch's translation, which I know Rowling has got. So I don't know if she's read a more authentic one. Yes, some in the original telling. In the original telling we've got from the Greek, she's pregnant. So Aphrodite, Venus, sets her impossible tasks. So the first one is she throws a great mass of mixed seeds, so wheat, barley, poppy seed, chickpeas, lentils, and beans, and says she has to sort them out before dawn. Fortunately, a clever ant helps her, and the ant and all his ant buddies performs the miracle, the impossible. Venus naturally is delighted. And sets her another test. She has to cross a river and fetch golden wool. So this is the golden fleece. Has to fetch golden wool from particularly violent sheep. Now, I don't know what these sheep are like in the Mediterranean, but living in Wales, we've got lots of sheep, and I can't say I've ever met a sheep I've been frightened of approaching. But anyway, these are scary sheep. So she's given instructions by a reed. So this is the kind of reed that you'd have in a woodwind sort of instrument. So it's a talking reed. And the instructions are to wait for the sheep to be asleep, which sounds prudent, and then gather the fleece from the bushes that the sheep sort of rub up against. So she succeeds that. Second impossible task completed. So she's now given a crystal vessel into which to collect the black water from the source of the rivers Styx and Cocytus. So Styx is the river that goes through Hades. So she climbs the cliff. She's daunted by the place. There are dragons everywhere, and she falls into a slough of despond. Jupiter himself takes pity on her and sends his eagle to battle the dragons and retrieve the water for her. So you'll notice so far she's not really had to do very much. A lot of this has been done for her. She despairs at each stage and is trying to commit suicide at each stage and is rescued by these intercessors. So the last trial that Venus imposes on Psyche is a quest to the underworld itself. So she's done Styx, now she's actually going to go to the real place. She takes a box and she has to obtain in it a dose of the beauty of Proserpina, queen of the underworld. Venus claims Persephone is easier than Proserpina. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Persephone.
You're good.
I'm more familiar with Persephone. Okay. So Venus claims her own beauty has faded through tending to her ailing son. Remember, Cupid is injured and needs this remedy in order to attend the theatre of the gods. Psyche once again despairs, climbs a tower, planning to throw herself off the top of it.
The talking tower.
A talking tower. The tower, however, suddenly breaks into speech and advises her to travel to Taenarus, where she will find the entrance to the underworld and offers detailed instructions of how to get away with the task.
Just a reference for non-classicists is that Taenarus is in Sparta.
Right,
and so this is definitely an ascetic journey she's going on. The Spartans are famous for their selflessness and their sublimation to the whole rather than to their ego selves. So
yes,
that's the journey she's on. Take a trip to Sparta, honey.
But as well as being given directions, essentially, she's told she has to carry honeyed barley in both of her hands, and she has to have 2 coins in her mouth. And she's warned to maintain silence as she passes several figures. So there's a lame man, a mule loaded with sticks, a dead man swimming in the river.
Audi vide tace.
Yes. Yeah, you should see, hear, and be silent. So all of these figures are supposed to try and
mistranslate that exactly as Rowling did.
I did.
Is listen, see, and be silent. When she flips the see and hear thing, I'm just like, wow, you only had 3 words there. You're going to get that straight. Anyway, go
on. Okay, so everything goes according to plan. So she gives the ferryman Sharon the coins. Our old friend Cerberus, the 3-headed dog. You may know him as Fluffy. He gets the honeyed barley. They're both happy.
There's 3 trials here. The reason she's given the cakes is not only to feed Fluffy,
okay,
but it's to make sure she can't use her hands, because because she's going to be tempted while she's in hell to help people, because that's what I do. That's what I do.
Good spot.
Okay, and so you have a man. I'm going to jump in here because this is the part that I love is there's a man and he's on a lame ass, and the sticks keep falling off. He's got this thing loaded up and he doesn't want to get off the thing because he's got a bad leg. Not especially subtle reference there, and he can't get off the donkey. And he's asked her to help him pick up the sticks that are falling off. And again, the tower. The talking tower, which is really the ascendant, says to her, "Don't pick up sticks." And then there's 2 other trials. There's a floating body as it'll go across the river. A man whose hands are somehow mangled. And he asked for help to get into the boat. Don't help him get in the boat. You still got that cake you got to hold on to. And then both cakes at that point. And then there's women that are weaving, and they want her to help, while they're doing this stuff, help with her hands to do these things. Anybody's helped somebody, with knitting and such, so we know what this is about. So, and they say, don't help the women, don't help the lame man, and don't help the guy floating next to the boat. Now, the boat we recognize from Half-Blood Prince, and other spots. But anyway, this is somebody she knows really well. Anyway, she gets to Proserpina, and what happens, Nick?
So Persephone grants a wish, fills up the box with her design beauty, and Psyche is almost home and dry. She's got exactly what she needs.
She's told she can't eat. She can't eat all the wonderful meal, because if you eat in hell, the delights of hell, you stay in hell.
Yes.
So instead, she just asks for coarse bread, a Spartan meal.
Yeah.
She won't sit at the table. She has to sit down. Pardon me for interrupting, but that's a big scene. That's a big piece.
But she's also not allowed to open the box.
Little self-control here.
This is Psyche's downfall, because Psyche has to know. She's a detective. She has to know. So she opens the box with a bold curiosity, with the aim of enhancing her own beauty, but she finds nothing inside but an internal Stygian sleep, which essentially puts her into a unmoving torpor.
I'm going to interrupt there, because you said it's curiosity that drives her to do this. And that's Pandora in that box. This box is really her desire for beauty. I mean, she's repressed all of these feminine wanting to help people and nurture them, especially that poor guy with the bad leg. And instead, she gets through all of that. She has the coin, she has the cakes for the dog, and she's out. She's literally outside the cave. She's made it. That desire to be beautiful and to be longed for, really the erotic impulse, that catches her. And as you say, she falls asleep. And at this point, it's like, now we're Sleeping Beauty.
Yeah. So every Sleeping Beauty needs a Prince Charming. Meanwhile, Cupid, who's been healing under Aphrodite's care, is now healed. He's got a scar, but he's okay. He flies out of his mother's house via a window, finds Psyche, draws the sleep from her and replaces it in the box, and then pricks her with an arrow. He lifts her into the air and takes her to present the box to Venus. So is this Psyche ascending? Is that the point?
That's right. That's the moment.
Okay.
That's the moment. And there's some differences about when the arrows thing, but in English you get eros and arrows. It's fun, but it's not so much in the Greek. Not so much in the Greek. Sagittarius, there's different quite to the thing. But anyway, go on. This is great.
So Cupid takes his case to Zeus, the king of the gods, who gives his consent in return for Cupid's future help when Zeus may want a certain maiden. Zeus has Hermes convene an assembly of the gods in the theatre of heaven, where he makes a public statement of approval, warns Venus to back off, and gives Psyche ambrosia, that's the drink of immortality, so that the couple can be united in marriage as equals, sort of like a partnership in a detective agency. Their union, he says, will redeem Cupid from his history of provoking adultery and sordid liaisons, which he has always claimed was just a distraction technique. Zeus's word is solemnized with a wedding banquet, and they are happy ever after, John.
And they have a child.
They do well in some versions. They have a child. We talked about Bullfinch's translation. The child is omitted, but in the original Golden Ass, then they have a daughter whose name is Voluptas,
That's right.
which means pleasure. So
very well done, Nick. That was
Thank
great.
you.
That was great. I mean, pardon my interruptions. I mean,
No,
I love
more
the
than
story.
welcome.
I need to say, first of all, that I've got 14 books on mythology on my wall, all of which I have bought. That's not true. There's one book that I had before that, Paul Deal's Symbolism in Greek Mythology, that my mentor at University of Chicago introduced me to, and that had all the answers in it. I didn't need any of the other 13 books. But anyway, the mythology is so important to her because it's one of the 7 keys, 7 shed tools, because it's about what Rowling does. Rowling is writing about really exteriorization of the inner person in story with these archetypal symbols. So she has literary alchemy. She has Christian symbolism. She has the psychomachia, the soul allegory. That's right there in your face. All of them, again, are about this perfection of the soul in the spirit. And the chiastic structure represents that structurally. But we also have it in the Christian symbolism, because that obviously represents the divine aspect. And we have it in the mythology because all of mythology, at least the better ones, are about the meeting of the psychic sphere, the human sphere, and the divine, and the elevation of the one into the other. What Paul Deal talks about, in terms of love, is banalization and sublimation. That we're going to experience the sublime, the anagogical. We can do that in story, and really the purpose of story is to, again, let us see with our, the eye of the heart, this aspect of ourselves, and to be invited to that journey. When you're reading these stories, and all you're looking for is, I forget the name of the characters, the actors, excuse me, that play the parts of Robin and Strike. You're at that in your mind. You're like, oh, I just can't wait for them to lock lips. I can't wait this and that. Well, you're into that's the banalization of love, and you're missing the sublimation, which is really this vocational aspect, where you're conjoined. There's a mutuality of love, and Rowling is talking about this from the very beginning of the books. The very first scene is Lula Landry falling. She's dead on the street, and we learn later that she has 2 brothers, neither of whom are like biological brothers. Well, one's a half biological brother, but he loves her. The biological brother, the soldier, he loves her really dispassionately, and he loves her for who she is, and he comes only because she demands that he comes. He's not forcing himself upon her at all. And the other brother is coming because he wants something from her. He wants to take something from her, and she won't give it to them. And so he throws her out of a height. That's the monster from the story, that she's supposed to be married to. And the brother only sees her fall and runs away. And so we see this Eros and Anteros, and that's what of course we meet Robin. Robin is on her way to Strike's office. She's gonna climb the magical stairwell, and all the time she's thinking about the night before, where she was in Piccadilly Circus, and she's under what she thinks is the statue of Eros, but it's not the statue of Eros. It's the statue of Anteros, which is this goddess of mutual god of mutual, brother of Eros. One is the son of Venus and Ares. The other is the son of Venus and Hephaestus. Again, the lame man. And that's, she's in love with being in love at that point. She hasn't quite seen the mashed pea inside that ring. She's just totally fascinated by that ring. I mean, that Rowling has plotted all this out, that all this is about making Robin come to terms with the fact that her love for Matt is the banalization of love. It's the love with being in love, not with the person. She doesn't even know Matt. She doesn't even really like the person Matt is. but she loves feeling safe, and she likes feeling loved by this man who's largely using her. Now, but she climbs this. First of all, she gets to the doorway, the end of this thing, and out comes Venus herself, frantic and mad, because of this thing. And she climbs the stairs, and there's Eros, Anteros himself. He's ugly. He's the monster in a way, and he throws her from a height. But he grabs her with his right hand to her left breast, which is, of course, the feminine aspect of herself over her heart, pulls her in and saves her life. And he doesn't pursue Venus, who, of course, is the ultimate in erotic, superficial, seeming love. Okay, so the story starts with Eros and Anteros is the distinction. And the best book in the series thus far is Troubled Blood, which has Fairy Queen as its backdrop. And all of Fairy Queen is about this Eros-Anteros distinction, the two Cupids. C.S. Lewis writes about that. It's a pillar of Spencerian scholarship that the stories inside there are about Eros versus Anteros in their various forms. Excuse me. So that's what the whole strike story is about. Robin, in her feminine psychology, she falls in love with love, not first of all with Matt Cunliffe, whose name is suggestive enough as to what this is really about, and then you have Ryan F. Murphy, who again, the Paul Newman figure, as Matt calls him, he again is a safe harbor. He loves her. He always takes care of her, and she feels obliged to do what I do with him, to nurture him and care for him, even when he's clearly unworthy of her attention. She thinks she knows she's in love with him, when clearly this is not what she's in love with. She understands that her real vocation, the sublime aspect of love, is with the monster at the top of the stairs. The Beethoven who's a boxer, and that is the whole conflict of the books, is her doing that. Now, Strike, he has the man, the male thing, where instead of having to be ascetic in terms of not nurturing and caring and feeding, and being concerned about physical appearance, Stryker never cares about his appearance, and is not caring or nurturing. He's just gonna, he's a boxer. He's brute force. His way of sublimating his self is through pain and hunger and physical challenges, and that's his self. That's his love of the truth. That's the way he sublimes this love. But he's recognized this now, that his love, when he wants to be loving, he's Cupid. He just goes out and gets laid, and he doesn't really see anything wrong with that. But now he's finally come to terms with the fact that he's in love with Robin because he's that way. And we get that, oddly enough, over a plate of spaghetti, in Hallmarked Man. And this, and we get this marriage of all of these elements of Rowling's theory: the mythology, the alchemy, the psychomachia, the chiastic structure, the Christian symbolism. All of these things blend together, in addition to the shock and the writing about writing and the experience of reading and writing. Now, that's the 7 tools right there. All of these things work together, which I call a triple play, even though it's, because I don't know the word for septuplet play. It is this thing. But we get, the silver mining. The reason that every part begins with the Maid of the Silver Sea in the trip to Sark, with no reference to the storyline of that thing. Every part begins with a reference to the mining of silver, right? Because the mining of silver is about going inward, going down deep. Obviously, anything that's digging into the earth is about interior work, and you're looking for the light, which is inside this thing, this divine light. It's often, it can be a pearl, can be silver, and you have to dig for that pearl of great price or the silver vein. And Sark, I love the fact he chose Sark, because there is silver on Sark, but the vein never materialized in any substance. So it's a failed mine, and that's what we get in the story, is this failed mine. But Strike has struck silver. He is already there. So the great conflict inside the story is between the Longcasters, not especially subtle, Valentine Longcaster, Valentine being the date assigned to Cupid and Eros, and Longcaster, the guy with the arrows, right? I mean, all the Longcasters, and the Lagards, you include them in that, and Tara, Tara with the 7 names, all of them are about seeming and appearing and about selfishness and about getting what they want. And they're consumed by how one should look and how one should act in a certain way. They're the erotic element. When Robin has her dinner with Cupid himself, the ugly Cupid, Eros, not Anteros, they go to a pasta restaurant and he doesn't order anything. Maybe he orders a beer, a Peroni, which unfortunately, looks like Al Ropi. But anyway, Robin orders a plate of spaghetti carbonara, and Valentine doesn't eat. He leaves her, calling her a pit pony, which is a whole thing of, the pit, being down, in there. We don't dig for things, and she orders spaghetti carbonara. Now, carbonara, if you're Italian, and my wife, grew up, we went to school in Rome, carbonara means the coal miner's meal. It's eggs and bacon and cheese and pasta. It's really a hearty Northern Italian meal for coal miners. And Robin is that person. But her meeting with Eros is so ugly, and it reminds her so much of that her relationship with Ryan F. Murphy is exactly that kind of superficial, safe place for her. Not a mutual love. She's lying to him left, right, and center. She knows that, even though he's lying to her too. What kind of relationship is this? They're in love with love, and they want to get married, and they can't really decide whether they want to have children or not. I'm like, wow, let's hope this family doesn't have children. Anyway, she can't eat the carbonara. she can't eat there. Fast forward to Sark. Strike takes a spade to the face because someone's out there digging in the earth, and he takes it in the face because that's what he's about. But he becomes, again, the ugly monster, and he's really self-conscious. He's not worthy of her love. But she appreciates that about him, that he's the guy who digs for the truth. He's the avenging fury. She makes spaghetti carbonara. She does the nurturing thing. This is something my wife pointed out to me. Strike, he's doing that work. He's the coal miner in the thing. He plows through that meal. He loves it. He eats it. This is delicious. I love it. And he wants to be loving. He really wants to let her know that he loves her. But she's so she gets a message from Ryan F. Murphy that suggests to her that this is more than just a safe spot, that he's being honest with her for the first time, and and she's really conflicted. But what does she do, Nick? She tells the story of her ectopic pregnancy. Right now, excuse me. Why does she do that? Because she knows that this is something she hasn't told her friend, her best friend, and she wants to talk to him about this. This is a torturing experience to him. Well, he's plowing through the food, and she has this breakdown. Her face falls into the spaghetti carbonara, and she doesn't eat it again. Or if she does it with hesitation. She's got her hair, and she wants to clean up. My wife pointed that out. She says she doesn't eat. She still can't eat. She's still in hell. She can't eat the meal. She can't do the digging yet. She can't, realize what's going on because she doesn't really know if this beast in front of her can be her lover, can be someone that she can be divinized with. She doesn't recognize that love. All she knows of love, Nick, and this is Rowling rewriting the story, kind of the fractured fairy tales version of the Perseus myth, of the Eros and Psyche myth, is that her first encounter with love is the monster, the gorilla, the man that attacks her and takes from her everything about her reproductive capability. We find out in the end, but he rapes her and just knocks her off the thing. And Gorilla comes back in this book. She always has the gorilla in the background. This is feminist Rowling rewriting the Eros and Psyche myth, and that's always in the background. This fear. Is it paranoia? It ain't paranoia when you're Robin, because she's got the scars to show that these people are crazy. This horrible manifestation of male power is always there in the background, and it's evident in the erotic element. And there's a suggestion of it in the anterotic element as well, with Strike and with Ryan F. Murphy and with Matt. And this is the conflict that she has, which is the conflict of every woman and of every man as well. Though we approach it, we have to go through different things, to get there, to be whole, to have our soul married to spirit. This is Shakespeare doesn't use Paul Deal or Robert Johnson to get there, but we see the same thing in the marriages of that and of the twins and in Shakespeare's comedies. That's what this is about, the marriage of soul and spirit. And Rowling, when she's confronted with people saying, oh, they're not together yet, what's going on? She flashes them a picture of Psyche ascendant saying, we're not quite there yet. And she says, I never said it was going to be easy, because, going to hell is not easy. It's a struggle. And the reader has to go through this. This is the elevation of the reader inside this story. This is the power of mythology. And Rowling gets that. Now, we haven't talked about where she gets this, Nick. Now, that's your bailiwick. She comes to mythology honestly. Can you talk about that? I mean, this is the biography side of things.
Yeah, really quickly. So Rowling always said that what she wanted to study at university was English. She wanted to study literature, but she was advised by her family. Being a clever young girl as she was, what she needed was a lucrative career as a secretary. Her father suggested that bilingual secretaries earn much more. So she went to study languages. So she went to Exeter to study French and German. Partway through the first year, and remember, this is really the first bit of freedom from home life that Rowling has got. She came to the decision that German and her should probably not maintain a relationship, and they shouldn't fool themselves that they were going to be friends afterwards. So she dropped German, plucked up her courage, and went to the classics department. So she at least started what in the US would be called a double major, which would be French and classical studies.
She goes to classical studies. I'm about to break in here and go, that is not classics.
So yeah, John, classical studies is not classics. So
thank you for saying that. But I'd have been much better off if I had taken classical studies. Yeah, it's great to have some facility. You can understand what that nasty Brandfoot is saying, when you read that stuff. But you can't. And the German, she also has German, where she translates German when Max and his girlfriend are talking in German. But that she studied myth, and that's really where she came to this understanding of this stuff. And she actually had that even before Exeter. One of her teachers at Wydeen, is it Wydeen? Wydeen Comprehensive School. Eventually becomes an astrologer and writes a book on mythology. So I mean, she's clearly been exposed to myth really from the get-go by her English teachers, and that's really where it begins. He has this stuff from the very beginning. We're one of the challenges now is we have to go back and identify all those elements of the story and how Rowling has done this. But if you have the large picture, that's what we've given you today. We haven't given you what is the man on the lame man on the ass? Who's that? And who's the person floating through the river? But this whole thing about I want to talk about is the biggest problem in the story to me is Strike saying, I talked about this on the post, the textual post, is that Strike repeatedly says, from Sark forward in the book, he says that we have to figure out why the murder in the silver vault was a necessity. And we get to the finish and we're just like, that's not a necessity.
No.
Just because he's short doesn't mean he has to be killed inside a silver vault.
No.
But if you understand the allegory of the silver vault, they have to go down into the earth to where the silver is. And there, this man who doesn't really care about the silver, he just wants to murder this man who's fallen in love. He's a sex trafficker, and he's fallen in love with this woman who's related to him, by adoption, that he's molested. I mean, Ian Griffiths really is an Eros figure in the worst banalization way. And he goes into this thing and he crucifies, he totally destroys this innocent young man who's going to take this woman, this pregnant woman, into his life and take on a totally new identity. Okay. That has to happen in the silver vault because of what silver underground represents, that inner work. He has to show that that's a terrible thing and that the silver can be hidden, and he crucifies that person. Literally, he takes they talk about the nose and the eyes and all these things. He takes the teeth out. Do you have to brutalize a body to remove the teeth? And his sexual organs, and then he puts that cross on his back. He literally makes a cross out of him, which is what crucifixion means. To mark him as, this is not what's real. This is just death, ugly and brutal. Well, the reverse of that is Strike's going into, that was necessary for the story, for you to see that, so that at the end, when Strike goes underground again and finds Sapphire Nagel chained to a pipe. Okay, sapphire means the blue stone, or just blue. She's a spiritual element, and Nagel means champion. It's from Neil. And and she's pale. She's horribly pale. She's the pearl underground, basically. She's the light. And Strike has worked to get to that point, and he brutally, as a man, goes underground and he trips Griffith, and Griffith doesn't. He's so effing short, he's a pygmy, he's the midget, all those things. Strike takes him down there and suffers, has his ear taken off. I think that could largely be a distractor because he's committing so many crimes inside this thing. But that's what was necessary about the crime being committed underground in a silver vault, is so you understand the allegorical spiritual meaning of his rescue of this woman, that his love for other, and specifically a woman, and rescuing her is anything but erotic. It's entirely anti-erotic. And he's mutilated almost the same way the body is in the silver vault, hence the silver thing, that he suffers the way Tyler Powell suffered for these women that are being sexually trafficked. And sexual trafficking, that's a core thing for Rowling because it's entirely erotic and abusive. There's nothing anti-erotic and mutual loving about it. There couldn't be a worse crime in her mind. So the murder mystery they have to solve is about this Eros figure who desecrates the body of this man who's pursuing this silver underground, and Strike has to come to that realization himself and rescue this pearl underground at Iron Bridge. Iron is, there's a wonderful scene about the Masonic thing. We can talk about this later, but where Pike says that silver and lead are like love versus lust and lasciviousness. It's really the whole reason I think the Masonic stuff is in there, is that Pike talks about Eros and Teros. Wow. And that's the pivotal message of the books, is Robin's love for Strike, love for men in general, has to be elevated from her fear of the gorilla and her experience of the safe seeming Eros love for the anti-erotic love of vocation, where she's Artemis, the Avenger, and he's Tisiphone, the Fury, also an Avenger, and that they're only about the truth, and that's their friendship that Strike says, "Marry me," he cries out at the bottom of the staircase. He's come to the bottom. He's not the Eros on the top of the stairs anymore. He's down there with her, suffering, in pain, saying, "Marry me." All right. And if you don't get the mythological aspect, Nick, I don't see how you get there. I don't see how you understand what this whole series is about. And I don't understand what reading is about and what story does to a person. And this is Rowling's great power. It's a horrible detective piece of fiction. Ian Griffiths, we barely see him, and all of a sudden he's the horrible villain, and the absurdity of the murder. He has to do this because he's short. Forgive me. All right. I mean, there's other stuff we can talk about, like Fiona Griffiths. We haven't talked about Fiona Griffiths at all.
We could talk for another 3 hours. Unfortunately, we can't. But maybe we can pick this up next week.
Yeah. There's more, and then we have to talk about, again, Rowling's tweet about the God-shaped hole in her heart. Well, I mean, how can a woman who writes stories like this, who believes in the immortality of the soul, what is her? She's clearly talking about the soul's perfection in the spirit, and yet she can't go there. What are the obstacles to that? Anyway, we'll talk about that. But seriously, we owe this all to Strike fans and the Strike Ellicott files. If they hadn't, voiced right up front and center, how dare you and all this stuff, if they hadn't done that and said that, how painful they found the story in their, idolatory terms towards Rowling. If they hadn't done that, then Rowling wouldn't have said, "I never said it would have been easy," and flashed a Psyche ascendant.
No, I think it's true.
I would have said this about mythology, Nick, but nobody would have believed me. Instead, I got Rowling in the background, and now everybody will be like, "Oh yeah. We always knew about the mythology, John. We always understood that lake and shed thing." Sure you did. All right. Anyway, but that's the power of this story, and why, even though this story really is important mostly for getting us to the last two things, I think it's most important because it lays out so powerfully this Eros Anteros distinction and the agony that Robin is in between gorilla man, safe man, and spirit. The mutual love of Anteros, which is Cormoran Strike.
Brilliant. Thank you, John. Lots more, I think, to pick up next week.
Gosh.
Take care.
I'll be sending things to the paid subscribers, pieces about this, and specifically about the Orestes element in Harry Potter. That'll talk about that. But salute.